Hey yo, welcome back. Uh, yeah, you have been thrown around like ping pong balls today. A full day of trial streams, and we. Hey Jenny, yes, you are on time, and may or may not forgot to redirect from the Yodi area stream. Not sure, but I hope everybody will find their way back here. Yeah, we when we left off a bit ago, we were talking the still on direct examination of FBI agent Eli McBride, who has shared a whole lot of evidence and a bit of theory uh, to the court. Hi, this way up. Thank you, thank you. And most, if not all of that, we know from prior testimony that nowhere has Breasia's blood, bodily fluids, or anything been found on Mr. Dinkins' stuff. So apparently they are claiming, well, he must have cleaned it all with the bleach and magically got rid of absolutely everything at every location. Yeah, and I've said this prior on several times. I think there is enough circumstantial evidence in this case to point the finger at Mr. Dinkins and remove everybody else, making it beyond reasonable doubt. But the more of these unnecessary things the prosecution brings in, the more it muddles the water for me. Just saying. And yeah, so it is quite frustrating. It is. Luckily, I had a palate cleanser with the Yodi Aris trial, where she described her encounter with Travis Alexander the first time they were alone with each other. And okay, that happened. And yeah, you have to watch that stream. It's from earlier today. Well, just before this stream. So you can go back and watch that if you want a palate cleanser after we are done with this stream. What else do I have? Yeah, I got a bag of these. It's candied peanuts. Oh, amazing. Like $3 for half a pound. Oh, they are good. They are so good. And since it's past 7 p.m. over here in Sweden, cheers. Oh. Okay, Unicorn says he's only on day 4 of Yodi Aries, so he's saving it to watch in order. Yeah, good. Yeah. Both me and David have a playlist, so you can watch it all in 1 hour to 2.5 hour stints. It's a. I think we are doing a good job with that. But we are here for this. And let's see here. There. Yeah, and all the YouTube things. Like, press that thumbs up. Subscribe if you think, yeah, this guy is good. At least entertaining, informative, explains stuff, and is fun. Makes the trial bearable to watch, maybe. And when you have done that for a few times, consider becoming a member. It's $3 a month, and it gets you members-only content, and a link to the Discord where you can continue discussing the stream for now. For example, there's a different channel in Discord for this trial. So you can just talk about it with people who also watch the stream with you. I think that's a good thing. I do. But yeah, we were with this guy. And I'm wondering where he's going next. Everybody ready? Hold on. I got my AC, portable AC going on full speed, so it might be a bit noisy in the background. Hold on just a second and I will turn it down. Okay. All right. Again, sorry. Again, I think that this trial is very disrespectful for Breasia Terrell. She deserves justice and she deserves a much better prosecution than this. You can agree or disagree with me. That's my opinion. Let's move on here.
Be in adjournment for 15 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, 15 minutes break. Good. So we are almost caught up with day 4. Then we will continue with day 5. I would assume I'm going for 3 hours. I would assume. So we get the end of day 4, beginning of day 5. So we catch up. So we are completely caught up by Sunday. Definitely Sunday. So we will go live with live feed on Monday.
Ms. Cunningham, you may proceed.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Excuse me?
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Okay. Special Agent McBride, I'm going to hand to you a number of exhibits here. Let me just show these to counsel so that they've got a perspective. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 117, 118, 119, and then 120.
Are they showing the
You may.
baseball bat?
I'm handing you State's Exhibits 117, 118, 119, and 120. I want you to look at these physical items of evidence and then tell me if you recognize each of these. Let's start with our first one.
Can I grab some glove? Would you mind if I grab that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. What do we keep right now? That's right.
Good choice, FBI agent.
Thank you.
Gloves with evidence.
Grab too many.
So these are some of the items in the trunk or something that doesn't have any traces of the victim on them. What's it? Ooh. Hold on here. Why are the evidence bag already open? Did I miss anything in prior streams that they haven't been shown before? Why is the evidence bag already open? Gigi, thank you so much for being my mod. Everybody say thank you to Gigi. And go from top chat to live chat so you don't miss any of the chats. Okay. But again, why is that evidence bag already open? Why doesn't he read from the evidence bag what it is? What's the point? I mean, that should be read first. What does it say? Line of evidence. Is it breached, not breached? Why is the bag? Yeah, the evidence bag is already open. This is insane. I really hope this was done without it being shown. But it seems like they are introducing this evidence now to the court. This is strange. I don't know what's going on anymore. All the evidence stuff is already opened. How is this allowed?
Do you recognize each of these exhibits?
Have I
do.
missed
Okay.
anything from the previous
For purposes of our
trial,
record, what is State's
please?
Exhibit 117?
But it's already open.
117 is the white Gorilla Tape.
Yeah, where's the seal? You have to open it there on the stand to make sure there's no breach in the evidentiary line. What? I'm honestly hoping that this has been entered into evidence previous to this, because if it hasn't, then it's a breach of custody. Then the prosecution have had these opened at her table, in an evidence locker opened. Yeah, as I said, the child, Breasia Terrell, deserves better than this.
State's Exhibit 118?
118 is a black sheath for a knife or machete.
119?
119 is a hatchet.
And 120?
And then 120 is the black baseball bat.
Are these the items that we previously noted in the group exhibit that we've talked about relating to the maroon Chevy Impala?
Yes.
Okay, and then just describe the chain of custody for these items of evidence.
Well, the chain of custody.
It seems like this is when they enter it into evidence. I mean, holy fork. I mean, again, I have to assume this has been provided to the court before. Otherwise, but even if it was, they should have been resealed in between showings. I don't get in. I don't know.
Custody would have been, to my knowledge, the extent that I can talk to, is they would have been collected on the scene, seized by Cameron Smith, and then from that point forward, I know from the scene we drove them to the Quad Cities RA FBI office. From that
There's
point
no
forward, I
objection.
can't speak to the chain as I wasn't a part of that.
Certainly. At any rate, then, as far as these items were concerned, were these all items that you seized from the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibits 117, 18, 19, and 20.
I have no objection. Those exhibits will be admitted.
All right. What I'd like for you to do is let's focus on State's Exhibit 118. Could you
How
please
can
remove
they
that
be
item from the
entered
bag
into
so that we
evidence
can get a perspective of what that
already
looks like?
opened? There, in my opinion, there is a breach.
As far as
In
the
the
sheath
chain
is
of
concerned,
custody,
would
if
that
they
hold
were
a
opened
narrower, that's, I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to use it, a narrower sheath or a broader sheath?
The sheath would hold a narrower blade.
All right. State's Exhibit 119, could you please
Yes.
show us the
With the
hatchet so that
evidence
we can
that's
get a
already
perspective of that item as well?
and he can testify
And
about
I'll
the
just
chain
get
of
those
custody.
items.
I mean, what? If he, I mean, this is such a appellate issue. Because in my opinion, the chain of custody is broken because she walked up with them to him to admit them into evidence. He can testify to the chain of custody, but they're opened.
Remove those for you,
Sure.
so that you don't have to deal with those. All right. Going to State's Exhibit 120.
Nobody's questioning this. How is this even remotely allowed? I thought that handling of evidence was both a state and federal issue
And
with
then finally,
specific,
State's
this
Exhibit
has
117, so that we
to
can
be
also
done.
get a perspective of that gorilla tape.
And here everything is already opened. And duct tape.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's remarked as State's Exhibits 6-1 through 6-20.
Everybody, if you have social media, please, if you wouldn't mind, share the link to this stream or
may.
I'm
retweet
handing you
mine.
what's remarked as State's Exhibit 6-1 through 6-20. I'd like for you to look at those exhibits and tell me if you recognize those that group exhibit.
I mean, you can't just compare from a photo to the actual evidence. They need the chain of custody from when he collected them, sending them off, returning them every step of the way. Oh,
I do.
How do you recognize State's Exhibit 6-1 through 6-20?
I recognize them to be fair and accurate depictions of photographs that we took of the items in the Camaro.
And do those photographs essentially follow the same format of what we noted when we published the photographs from the items in the Chevy Impala?
Yes.
Okay. Just generally, and in the interest of time, is there anything that was of particular interest that stuck out to agents when you were going through and looking at those items?
There were two items.
And what were those two items?
One was a white undershirt, commonly referred to as a wife beater. Another was a black
fork out of this.
colored fold-out knife.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 6-1 through 6-20.
No
Those
objection.
exhibits will be admitted.
Then it's
Your
not
Honor, may I do a limited
issue anymore.
publication?
You may.
There has to have been a hearing of any sort, shape, form. But in my opinion, then those should have been
I placed
resealed
before you State's
until he
Exhibit
got
6-3.
it.
What are we looking at?
We're looking at
But
the
without
white
an
undershirt that I
objection,
just
There's
earlier
no
mentioned.
appellate issue.
Was there information that was imparted to the evidence response team about an article of clothing that Mr. Dinkins would have been wearing in the middle of the night of July 10th of 2020?
Yes.
And what was the nature of the information that was imparted?
I think the nature was that he often wore this style undershirt.
Okay, and so by virtue of that, is that why this particular item was of interest and was photographed?
It was one of the reasons, yes.
Okay, was there another reason why this particular item was of interest and photographed?
Just due to the stains that were on the shirt.
Okay, what was the location of the stain as we see in State's Exhibit 6-3?
In 6.3, you can see the stains. I don't know if you can see it all that well. It's kind of more up towards the head area right there. And I think there might be a few down on like the, right by where your fingers are.
And then going to State's Exhibit 6-4?
So on 6.4, you can see them a little more predominantly up on the left side toward the head, and then again on the bottom left side, right in that area.
Okay. And then directing your attention to State's Exhibit 6-14. What's of interest in this photograph?
Here's in the kind of top middle portion is the black fold-out knife that I talked about.
Okay. 6-19,
That's a closer up picture of said knife.
6-20.
And that's a picture of the knife unfolded.
All right. Why was that item of interest?
I mean, just any time that we have a missing individual and we're searching vehicles that we think might be
Look like a
associated with that
brand
missing
new
person,
knife.
anything that could constitute a weapon is going to be an item of interest.
Okay. Did that conclude your involvement in this matter?
The three searches were all that I was involved with for.
Okay. The events that you've described, they occur in Scott County, Iowa.
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Waters. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I will be as brief as I can be, but I would just like to know, to kind of restate your involvement, just very briefly. So my understanding.
Nobody asks about the chain of custody. How is this possible? I have to... Iowa chain of custody. Iowa. Verbatim. Evidence and properly. Yeah, I can't access that paper. Yeah, just I will have it written down so I can check it out later.
Is that you were involved with the FBI's evidence response team, correct?
Correct.
And then short, we can just call it ERT.
Yes.
The involvement is essentially, can be either one of two things, forensic or non-forensic searches, right?
That's generally the two type of searches really anywhere you do.
So my understanding with these three searches, or the searches of these three vehicles, was both non-forensic and forensic, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. Generally, a forensic is going to encompass non-forensic. Non-forensic obviously would just be everything except for forensics. Forensics is going to include everything.
Okay, so the forensics would essentially be testing for DNA, blood, seminal liquid, some sort of bodily fluid, something like that.
Correct,
right?
yes.
Okay. And then you were requested, I think you said on July 13th of 2020 by the Davenport Police Department to conduct these searches, correct?
I was requested by Cameron Smith. I would imagine that they contacted either Cameron or the supervisor at some point. I don't know when that would have occurred, but I would have been contacted by Cameron either the 12th or the 13th.
Okay, and then in any event, on July 14th of 2020, this is where you actually go to this public works place and search these three vehicles.
That's correct.
Okay, and then essentially you testify that you use this 12-step process of searching these vehicles, right?
That's the process that we use for generally every scene.
Now, just before we go into these 3 searches, all 8 of you, as this search is being conducted, are wearing, essentially hazmat suits, right?
Oh, I wouldn't call them. I get what you're referencing. They're not hazmat suits. They're made of Tyvek material that keeps us safe from anything that we might encounter, as well as keeping our own DNA and biological, anything like that off of whatever it is we're searching.
Sure. I mean, so you wear these specialized suits. So, one, you don't taint any evidence, right?
Correct.
Or possible evidence, right? And then you don't want to get your blood, sweat, tears, whatever it may be, on any of this stuff that you're searching or that you're standing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk first about the motorhome. There was some indication that either blood stains or some sort of stain, could be from a bodily fluid, might be in this motorhome. Correct?
From the initial survey, yes.
Okay. You're actually physically in the motorhome on July 14th of 2020, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you smell bleach at all during that time?
I don't recall smelling bleach, no.
Okay. Is there, and I'm going to probably reference this a few times, but is there a test that the FBI uses or any law enforcement agency uses to test or detect bleach?
There's nothing that our evidence team would use. That I'm sure there might be. I couldn't speak to what the lab uses, but there's nothing on scene that we could use.
Okay, so I think you testified maybe that the alternative light source that you use could detect a fluorescence of bleach, right?
I said that it's got the possibility of detecting a number of different types of light. So when it fluoresces, it doesn't necessarily mean that it absolutely is biological fluids. It could mean that it's cleaning, different cleaning solutions. It could mean that it's different, plant-based things. There's really, that's why it's not a confirmatory test. It's just, it could provide us insight as to there might be something worth sending to the lab, but it isn't anything confirmatory.
Sure, but then you would swab something like this or cut it out of, whatever material it may be in, right?
Yeah, we would either swab it or send the whole thing to the lab.
Okay, so once it gets into the lab, does the lab have the technology to test for the detection of bleach?
I don't know. I couldn't speak to that.
Okay. In this motorhome, there was a sink that you said was of import, right?
Yes.
Okay. You're aware there was no running water in the RV, right?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't, it made sense that there was not any.
Okay, and then I think you said that the sink was either swabbed or some sort of swab was used on the sink, and then whatever results from that, you would have bagged it, sent it to a lab, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, meaning you collected evidence from the sink, you put it in a bag, and then you sent it on to the lab.
So we would have swabbed the sink, swabbed the sink, packaged it, and then once it's seized, then whatever happens as far as it going to the lab, that's the case agent's call.
Okay, so with any one of these swabs or any one of these stains in any one of these vehicles, you wouldn't have had any involvement in testing it for blood, DNA, vaginal fluid, any sort of bodily fluid. You wouldn't have had any involvement in that.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I should say that there could be, if they reach out to me and say, hey, what are your thoughts for sending this to the lab? I don't recall that happening in this manner, probably because Mr. Smith was on scene, so he saw everything and knew everything that was going on.
I mean, how many, I'll call them exhibitions, or how many, jobs have you been on as part of the ERT?
I would say easily over 100.
Okay, and then in those over 100, it's pretty typical that you're looking for some sort of bodily fluid on a bed, right?
When we're dealing with, well, no, I wouldn't say that. If there is a bed in the scene and we are looking for, and we have like a missing person or a sex assault or something like that that would make sense as to why we're looking at that bed, then yes.
Then it's pretty typical for an alternative light source to show an indication of bodily fluids, right? Is that fair?
No. Again, it's kind of hit and miss. It can be, sometimes it can show it. Hopefully it shows it. Sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on what it is that you're looking for. I mean, the ALS isn't, it's not 100%. It's just a tool that we use to help try to enhance our ability to find.
I mean, in some trials, it's used as actual evidence. And here he is downplaying it. Oh,
and, certain things.
Is it typical to move items around when you take pictures of items?
It is, yes.
Okay. Is there any reason that you would know that, well, we looked at an exhibit earlier that showed a picture of a small container of cleaning bleach. Do you remember that exhibit?
The green bottle?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any reason that that little bleach bottle would have moved spots if the Davenport Police Department has a picture of that bottle in another place?
Not to my, I mean, I don't have an answer for that. No, I don't know why it would have moved.
Did you or anybody from your team, those 8 people, move that bleach bottle?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And then just specifically for the RV, did you find any firearms?
No,
Did you find any ammunition in the RV?
no,
Specifically, you didn't find any 38 special ammunition?
no,
No ammunition whatsoever?
not to my knowledge. No.
Then I want to move on to the Impala. I think it said that the left shoulder of the passenger seat was of interest to you, right?
Yes.
And that would have been because you saw some semblance of a stain, right?
Correct.
Okay. You submitted, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you said is that you cut out that little patch in that seat and then you sent that on to the lab, right?
The first part's correct. I didn't send anything to the lab, but I would have cut that piece out, and then again, the case agent would have made that determination.
Okay,
for what
but somebody from the team sent it on to the lab.
I would imagine so.
And then, again, you wouldn't have had any further involvement with actually testing that little cutout piece.
That's correct.
Did the Impala smell like bleach at all?
I don't recall the Impala smelling like bleach.
Well, I mean, you would agree with me that bleach has a pretty strong smell, right?
Initially, yeah. I would say that over time, it dissipates. The smell dissipates.
And then the items of the trunk, we looked at quite a few pictures. Essentially, what happened is you took pictures of these items, and then you collected all of those items we just went through, right?
We collected those items, yes, that we just presented.
Okay, and then specifically, we looked at pictures of those boots in one of those exhibits, right?
That's correct.
That would have been those yellow Timberlands.
Correct, yes.
And then I think that you said, or you testified, that they look pretty clean, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, are we aware whether those boots were tested for any dirt on the inside or outside of the boot?
I'm not aware.
Okay. Did you or the case agent direct this lab we're talking about to test for dirt?
I did not. I can't speak to what the case agent did.
Are you aware whether those boots were tested for anything?
I'm not, no.
Okay. And then we talked about this hatchet that's actually sitting right up here in front of me. I think that would be exhibit number 119, right?
I don't remember the exhibit number, but I do recall what you're talking about.
Well, you just looked at that hatchet, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that the hatchet had hardly been used?
I couldn't answer that.
Well, there's no obvious chips or abrasions on the metal of the hatchet, is there?
I don't recall without looking at it, but I don't know if that would.
Here, well, I can bring it to you.
Sure.
another piece of evidence in an unsealed
I'm
bag.
giving you exhibit number 119. Again, do you notice any obvious abrasions or dents on that hatchet?
I don't know anything that necessarily stands out without further lab examination.
Okay. Do you notice any stains on that hatchet?
Yes,
Okay. Where?
on the blade portion.
Again, you wouldn't have had any involvement in actually testing that hatchet? Though,
No.
Right? Okay. What about the bat? Did you notice any dents in the bat?
The bat looked pretty beaten up. I mean, it looked like an old, fairly used bat.
And then, just so I know, how long did you guys look or search this Impala?
I would have to look at my documentation. I want to say we started the search of the Impala at approximately 2 p.m. And I mean, we seized all evidence at 6:30 p.m., but that also accounts for the Camaro in there. So I would say, again, without looking at the documentation, I would be guessing that it was anywhere between 2 to 3 hours.
Okay, and that's fine. And the reason I ask is because you extensively searched this vehicle, right?
I feel like we did, yeah.
Okay. You didn't find any tarps in the Impala, correct?
Correct.
Didn't find any plastic sheets,
No,
didn't find any garbage bags.
we did not.
Didn't find any firearms in the Impala.
That's correct.
Okay. And then with the Camaro, I'm guessing, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you searched that pretty extensively as well, correct?
Yes.
No firearms,
Nope.
no plastic sheets,
Nope.
no garbage bags.
Nope.
Did you find any bleach?
We did not we did not find any bleach.
In the Camaro, though, you did find that black little knife, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then a white wife beer.
Yes.
And then, of course, you would have sent those two items on to the lab for further testing.
The case agent may have.
Sure. One of you did.
It was not me. I mean, again, we just collect and package evidence. We don't, unless it's my case, I don't have anything to do with whether it goes to the lab or not.
And then again, any item in the Camaro, you wouldn't have had any involvement in testing it.
That's
Blood,
correct.
DNA, anything of the like.
Nope.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just kidding you.
Yes, thank
Nothing
you.
about the
Again,
evidence
for
there.
purposes of the record, what date did you process and search those vehicles?
That'd have been the 14th, so July 14th of 2020.
And if those vehicles had been seized on July 10th of 2020, would you imagine that any smell of bleach would have dissipated within that 4-day time frame?
It's very possibly that it could have, yes.
Okay. As to the issue of running water in the sink, if with that RV being out there at the Public Works facility, was it connected up to any water source?
It was not.
Okay, and then of course, if it had been stored in a area that was essentially a parking lot, would you imagine that there wouldn't be any running water going to the vehicle at that point?
I think there at least could be the ability for that.
Oh,
There could be the ability for that. But at any rate, the owner of that RV is going to know whether or not there's running water available to be able to wash hands.
Yes,
Okay.
I would think so.
Certainly. When you go into these sinks though, and you process the sink, are you considering whether or not there's running water, or are you just simply being very comprehensive in the coverage of the processing that you engage in?
I would not consider that at all.
Okay, certainly. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I don't know if you have the ability to articulate it, but is there discoloration on the hatchet itself, not the handle, but on the hatchet?
I don't, I mean, with my naked eye, looking at it right now, there are a few marks, like
Okay.
scuff marks, it looks like.
All right. And would that be consistent with something that had been used?
I would think so. You know, I can't say on an expert level whether that's true or not, but
Sure.
it looks like something that's been used.
Okay. What is the color of the blade of the hatchet?
Black.
Okay. And then so when you look at the color on the blade of the hatchet, is there variations then in the surface so that it's not a total black hatchet?
There are.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Waters.
This is seriously so bad. Everything here, the trial, the prosecution,
Sir, when
the
you were
defense
searching
not asking stuff.
the RV,
they should
did you
be.
take any swab of the drain of the sink?
I don't know what specifically. I believe that would have been Jasmine swabbed. I will say most of the time when we're swabbing the sink, they will swab every part of the sink.
Does that typically include the drain?
Like, are you talking about the pop-up drain, like the actual drain itself, or are you talking like a trap of some sort? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure.
Either one.
The drain, yes, it would not necessarily include the trap, if there's a trap, like a P trap or something. We don't always necessarily do that.
Okay, do you know if it happened with the search?
I would say that the drain, I can't speak to that it absolutely did. I would say usually our protocol would suggest that it did. With a P trap, I would say that it most likely did not.
Everybody in this trial is failing Breasia.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Everyone.
The state has no further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution,
Thank you.
witnesses, judge, defense, everyone. I'm so
Your Honor.
disappointed.
The state calls Jason Ellerbach to stand.
Everyone is failing Breasia. This is embarrassingly bad. Embarrassing.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? I do. Please have a seat.
Big guy. Oh, come on.
Please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Jason Ellerbach, Ellerbach.
What is your occupation?
Currently, I'm a police officer with the Davenport Police Department.
How long have you been employed with the Davenport Police Department?
I've been in Davenport a little over 16 years.
In what capacity have you served the Davenport Police Department?
Currently, I'm the lieutenant on the night shift as a supervisor. I've been a sergeant in the gun investigations unit. I've been on different shifts throughout the career here at Davenport. I've been in crime prevention unit many years ago when I first started. Served as many roles as a participant in Davenport Police
No.
Department.
Okay.
It's
Now, in what capacity were you working
more
for the department in
questions.
July of 2020?
At that time, I was assigned as the sergeant in the gun unit.
Were you involved in some way with the investigation of Breasia Terrell, who had been reported missing as of July 10th of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
In what different capacities were you involved in that investigation?
The main capacities that I was involved in was I was tasked with assisting in searching some areas once information came in for the case. At times I was assigned to assist in coming up with a plan and coming up with searching some of the areas that were identified through the investigation.
Now, were you involved in the search efforts that were conducted on July 10th up in the area of the Jersey Meadow Apartments?
I was not.
Okay. Were you involved in the search efforts of July 10th down in the area of Credit Island?
I was.
And then just very simply, what did your role consist of down in the area of Credit Island?
Yep, in that area on that day, many officers from multiple agencies were down there searching through the foliage in that area. Information was given that possibly would be a location of the body. I assisted in just walking through literally on a scrimmage line side by side with other detectives throughout the day. That day was sunny and hot. It was really hard to get through the train that day. And ultimately, nothing was found by me on that day.
Okay. And I'd like to take this opportunity just to educate. When you had talked about the search efforts down there in the Credit Island and the use of scrimmage lines, define what you mean by a scrimmage line.
Literally just walking shoulder to shoulder, arm's length apart, between different distances because you had to move your way around bushes, trees. The train was rough down there. So at times we'd be side by side and at times you'd be 10, 15, feet apart, just trying to work through the area.
Okay. Recognizing the proximity of individuals involved in the search, did this type of setup lend itself to ensuring that all of that area was covered to ensure that Breasia was not down there?
Yes, to the
Okay.
best of our abilities, yes.
Okay. Now, if we talk about that concept, was that same concept applied to the search efforts that would have been conducted anywhere relative to looking for Breasia Terrell?
They would have been very similar, if not the same, depending on the terrain.
Okay. Now, I want to direct your attention to events that would have played out on July 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. Before we talk about those events, Sergeant Ellerbach, were you aware of developing information that was coming into the Detective Bureau after Breasia had been reported missing at 8:29 a.m. that morning?
Yes,
Okay. Were you aware of who the party of interest was that was associated with Breasia?
yes.
Who was the party of interest?
Henry Dinkins.
And what was your understanding of why Henry Dinkins was a party of interest?
He's a male figure in the household with Breasia.
Okay. Was he the last known individual to be seen with Breasia Terrell?
Yes.
All right. Now, with the report of a missing child, in this investigation, beyond just doing massive searches, were there certain approaches being taken to this investigation to identify the movements of Mr. Dinkins through the night of July 10th, and I mean after the midnight hour, to the morning where he then had contacted her mother to say that the child was missing?
Yes.
Okay. What were two of those primary investigative techniques that were utilized?
One was probably the cell phone,
Sure.
and they're just trying to track down where he may have been throughout those specific dates.
Okay. As of the early morning hour of July 10th, was there some information that was developed from his cell phone that was the foundation for events that played out July 15th through July 19th?
The cell phone indicated that he may have been up near the area of Clinton, Iowa,
Okay.
at a store.
All right. And with that being said, did you know what location he would have been identified as being at there in Clinton at a store,
At Walmart.
at Walmart? Was that confirmed through video surveillance footage?
I believe it was. I did not do the confirmation of that video.
All right. Was that handled by other investigators and or officers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, given that piece of intelligence information, did that make the area of Clinton an area of interest?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Why?
Through the cellular device, it gave probable and likely areas of individual carrying that cell phone that would be good areas to search for Breasia. That is why the investigation kind of moved up to Clinton for us going up there with search teams.
What was your role in that aspect of the investigation?
My role for that was I was contacted by Lieutenant Chisholm at the time, and he had identified an area that needed to be searched up in Clinton. My specific role was to link up with local resources, identify the areas, identify the train and needs that would be in regards to equipment, personnel and staffing, in order to conduct a thorough search of those areas. I, on those specific dates, was stationed inside. I didn't do any of the searching. There were teams that were sent out to assist in the searching, broken down by the maps that at the time Lieutenant Benning, along with local resources, had identified as areas that we would like to search.
Okay. When you reference you're connecting up with local resources, define what you mean by that.
The Clinton PD, Clinton County PD, eventually Iowa State Patrol came up to assist. Any law enforcement area or agency. Scott County was also up there with us. It's kind of all hands that are available on deck to help us search those areas because of the severity of the case.
Did that include any law enforcement from our state DCI?
DCI may have been there.
Sure.
FBI was also there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't recall if DCI was there or not. They may have been, yes.
Certainly. And then as far as the terrain and needs, what was noted about the terrain, which would predicate the needs that were required for search efforts?
In regards to the train, we utilized four-wheelers, ATVs, just to be able to cover more ground at times. We used drones. The Iowa State Patrol airplane was utilized to assist searching larger areas. In water-fed areas or water areas, we used the kayaks and kayak teams. We were out on foot searching in the areas that we could get to. Any resource that we deem that would be appropriate and assist us in covering those areas that we identified through the cellular device, we utilized if we had available to us.
Okay. Now, I want to direct your attention, I believe, to State's Exhibit 38. Let me go ahead and put this up here on the easel. Before I ask you any questions, I want you to come down and orient yourself to this particular exhibit. Is it sergeant or lieutenant at this point in time?
Now it's lieutenant.
Okay, there we go. I can't keep up with all your promotions. All right, so Lieutenant Ellerbach, having had an opportunity to review State's Exhibit 38, do you understand what's depicted within that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
Now, does it include areas of Scott County that were areas of interest relative to the events that played out on July 10th of 2020 and search efforts?
Yes.
Okay. Does it also include Clinton County?
Yes, it does.
As you look at the portion of State's Exhibit 38 in the Clinton County area, is there an area that has been designated to identify the locations within that county that law enforcement would have searched?
Yes, it does.
Okay. How is that depicted on State's Exhibit 38?
On the exhibit, it's highlighted to me that looks pink in the areas that were designated for the searching efforts. Highway 30 is also highlighted as a path to get to those areas. That was kind of used as a land marker just to help us kind of identify the map,
Certainly. Highway 30, for purposes of our written record, runs what directions?
east and west.
Okay. As far as the areas that were searched, which sides of Highway 30 were searched?
On the south side were the main focuses of Highway 30.
Okay. And then were there search efforts even on the north side of Highway 30?
It does appear that, yes.
Okay. Did you actually prepare, for purposes of this operation, a document that set forth those areas and how they were divided up into grids?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect that I'm showing counsel what's been marked as States Exhibit 141-1 and 142-2.
I still can't get over that the previous witness entered things into record as evidence, and the evidence
course,
batch
Mr.
was
Honor.
already
Okay.
opened,
I'm
meaning
handing you what's been marked as States Exhibits 141-1 and 140-2.
chain of custody
141-2. Do
breach.
you recognize that group exhibit?
I'm still.
Yes, I do.
can't
How
get
do you
over it.
recognize this exhibit?
141-1 was the initial map that we identified as the areas needed to be searched.
Was that area later broadened?
Yes, it was.
Okay, explain.
Through cellular information and information coming in through the investigation, through the detectives, a cell tower up in that area also identified just the importance of broadening that search through the cellular device. 141-2 is then the new areas that we broadened to add additional areas to our search efforts.
Okay. Would that have included an area to the south of Highway 30 when we speak of the community of Comanche in the rural area around the Comanche area?
Yes, it would.
Okay, now, was that entire area divided up into various grids?
Yes, it was.
And then were each of those grids assigned a number?
Yes, they were.
Okay, with the entire efforts that played out on July 15th through July 19th, how many gridded areas were the subject of a search?
I see 24.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce States Exhibit 141-1 through 141-2.
No objection. Those exhibits will be admitted.
Your Honor, may I publish that? May I publish that?
You may.
Looking at States Exhibit 141-1 to begin with,
Uh,
how many
I
zones
just
or
sent
grids were there
to
initially
Kurt
established?
on civil law if he knows about an exception to.
In this picture, there's 13.
And then when we go to 141-2, does that set forth the additional zones that were established?
Yes, it does.
Were you stationed at the command center the entire time?
Most of the time, the very last day I went out, but I wasn't involved in any of the searching. It was still organizing search efforts, but the majority of the time, yes, ma'am.
And then what would happen at the command center?
So a lot would happen between organizing, a lot of things between food, resources, identifying who is searching certain areas. Once an area was complete, monitoring that, making sure that when it was completed as thorough as we could. If there are areas in that specific zone, if we had to go back to, if we had to drop additional resources into it, and then organizing those. Communicating with local resources, communicating with the investigators, command staff from multiple agencies, just to kind of keep them abreast as to what was going on. So there were many things going on inside of the command center, and really anything that was needed for the case, or the detectives, police officers that were conducting the search, if whatever they needed, we tried to organize those needs and get them to them if we could.
Okay. I've thrown out a date range just to verify that for the record. What dates then did these search efforts take place on?
It should have been, I believe it's the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th.
And was the 19th also that date as well, a date as well?
It may have been, yes.
Okay. Would it help to refresh your recollection by reviewing a report that you viewed or prepared?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm handing you a report. Tell me if you recognize that report.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize the report?
It's a report I narrated on August 3rd, 2020.
Does it help to refresh your recollection?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And was the 19th also a date that search efforts were conducted?
Yes, it was.
Was Breasia found anywhere within that area?
She was not.
And so as of July 19th, was this child still missing?
She was.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Freeze?
Briefly, Lieutenant, you seized no evidence in this case, correct?
I did not.
Would you agree with me that as of July 11th, 24 hours from Breasia Terrell's disappearance, that the theory of the Davenport Police Department was that Henry Dinkins had abducted Breasia Terrell?
I believed at that time he was a person of interest, that the investigation was needed to be furthered.
But the question is, the theory was that among law enforcement, the Davenport Police Department, the theory was that Henry Dinkins had abducted Breasia Terrell.
Yes.
Okay, so within 24 hours, that was the belief of law enforcement, correct?
Yeah, that he was involved in one way or another.
Well, how could there be another?
Through the investigation, the investigators had
Yeah,
to track down any leads.
24
And
I'm just saying within the first 24 hours, you thought he was involved in her abduction one way or another.
possibly, yes, yeah.
Okay. And within a couple of days, the assumption of the Davenport Police Department was that Breasia Terrell was dead, right?
I think the longer the investigation went on, that was a strong possibility, yes.
Well, would you agree with me that the Davenport Police Department would not have brought in an expert with cadaver dogs to search for a dead body unless they had a strong opinion that this little girl was in fact deceased?
I would agree with that statement.
That's all I have.
The state has no further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Okay. So,
Your Honor, our next witness is an FBI agent. That will take a little bit of time. Would this be a good time of the day to break?
I think it would be if that's the case in this Cunningham.
Thank you, Your
Thank you
Honor.
very much. We'll stand in adjournment or reconvene at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Your Honor.
okay. This was an interesting day. This was a really interesting day. In the absolute wrong sense of the word. In the absolute wrong sense of the word. And yeah, I sent the question to Kurt if he knows about any exception about the chain of custody that allows it for evidence bags to be pre-opened before entered into evidence. I don't think so, but I sent in a question and I hope he can answer it. Peace, Peony, how long until we are caught up? We are now going into day 5. And I believe today they are transmitting day 9. So we are 4.5 days after, but we have caught up almost a day and a half. So we will be there at the latest Sunday. We will be caught up at the latest. So Monday we will be completely caught up because Saturday and Sunday we can go on for quite a bit. Yes, great success. Kurt must know about custody chains, and I will. Hi, Angst Kitten. Did you miss anything exciting? Yes, the previous witness, not the last one that we saw, but the previous one, when he was entering evidence, when he received the evidence bag to enter the items into evidence, all the bags was already opened. And I've never seen that anywhere in any trial, that the evidence has been pre-opened. And here's the thing, nobody objected. So it can't, now the chance of it being an appellate issue is gone. This must be a local Iowa thing, but I doubt it, because in my opinion, the chain of custody is broken. It's broken. And everything in those bags. And if this will continue through the entire trial, that the evidence bags are pre-opened before entered into evidence, yeah, you can go back like half an hour and see it for yourself. And I can only pray that they have been having some pre-motion, pre-something that we didn't see. But even I don't think there's a strategy at all anymore. It's a complete cluster F. And it's 4 more weeks of it. Holy crap. I mean, yeah, it sounds, yeah, thank you, Angst Kitten. It sounds so odd. Oh. All right, here we have day 5. Yeah, Unicorn, neither the judge nor the defense said anything about it. Nothing. Not an objection, nothing. Marcus Alexander says, unless, as you said, something happened off screen, not objecting is malpractice. Yeah. Yeah, broken chain of evidence with no objection. I have never seen this, not in my entire career have I seen this. Not in any trial I have ever seen have I seen pre-opened evidence bags. Yeah, but I hope we will get an answer. I haven't had an answer yet from Kurt. I hope he will see it. But here we go with day 5. Sound up.
Well, I guess, yeah. Is everyone ready to proceed?
Yes.
Ms. O'Donnell, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Cameron Smith.
Now I know people are making clips. I hope whoever clip that part about the opened evidence bags, so we can get an answer from somewhere.
You'd raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Thank you.
FBI agent, directly out of a Gestapo movie.
Can you please state and spell your name?
Hi, yes, my name is Cameron Smith, Cameron Smith,
And how are you currently employed?
as a special agent with the FBI,
How long have you worked as a special agent for the FBI?
approximately 5 years.
And where are you currently stationed?
I'm stationed in Kansas City,
How long have you worked for the office in Kansas City?
approximately 2 years, a bit over 2 years.
Prior to working for the Kansas City office, where did you work?
I worked here in the Quad Cities.
Can you briefly describe your educational background and the training that you've received, in order to become a special agent with the FBI?
Sure. So previously, I worked in healthcare IT.
and I decided to join the FBI to be a special agent. So in September of 2018, I started my career with the FBI and held my training in Quantico, Virginia.
What type of training do you have to go through at Quantico?
Sure. So there are interview classes, interrogation classes, there are legal training, all sorts of training to provide you with the tools needed to be an agent.
And since, I'm assuming you graduated from that program,
Correct.
do you have to do any sort of ongoing training in order to maintain your position as a special agent?
There are provided trainings to you, yes.
What exactly are your duties as a
We
special agent with
finished
the FBI?
So I'm an investigator,
day 4,
so
and this is the
that could
beginning of
include
day
opening
5.
cases, conducting interviews, conducting searches,
Yeah, papieren bitte.
anything that a typical investigator would do.
So back,
Hold on. He looks a bit like Hawkeye. What's his name? He ran himself over with a snowmobile. A bit. Yeah.
in July of 2020, is that when you would have been working with the Quad Cities office?
Yes,
And at some point, did you become involved in an investigation involving a missing child, Breasia Terrell?
I did, yes.
Can you explain how you became involved with that case?
Yes, so I received a call from Davenport Police Department, and they told me there was a missing child, and they wanted
Yeah.
to
Jeremy
work
Renner.
together
A little bit.
to help solve
But
what was going
a
on.
dorkier
Do you recall approximately
Just
when
how-
you would have received that call?
Jeremy
I
Renner.
believe it was on July 10th.
So after receiving that call, what initial steps would you have taken with your investigation?
So my initial steps there, from what I remember, would be we did open up a case formally on our side, but initially we went over to, or here to Davenport, and went to the police station and started gathering all the details on what was known so far.
And that it would have been on July 10th?
Correct.
What does opening a case with the FBI look like?
Sure. So I would view that as a partnership. So Davenport was driving it, and we were there driving it alongside them.
Did you have a specific role then with the FBI investigation involving this case?
I was the case agent on the case.
What does that mean?
Yes. Witness, we were talking about end of day 4. Not the last witness, but the witness before. So within the last hour, I think, was the already opened evidence bags. I can't get over it. I hope Kurt sees my message.
That just means I'm the main point of contact.
How did you then begin your initial investigation?
So initial investigation would be just hearing the story from Davenport, seeing what details or information they have, and then working together on determining next steps.
Were you involved in any interviews or following up on tips, that sort of thing?
I was, yes.
What types of steps would you have been involved with regarding interviews or following up on tips?
So interviews would have been with Andrea Culberson. After that, if individuals called into the FBI and reported or said they had information about the missing victim, those would have been items that we would have followed up on.
Did you have a role in either assisting or orchestrating any search efforts or canvassing efforts?
I did, yes.
Can you explain the role that you would have taken in those efforts?
Sure. So initially, we knew there were vehicles in question. So I would have assisted with ERT and coordinating those efforts to get the vehicles in question searched.
And ERT means what?
That's our evidence response team.
And would that have consisted of notifying Eli McBride?
Yes, that is correct.
And so you were responsible for bringing in the ERT team to assist in executing the search warrants of those vehicles.
Yes, I assisted with that process.
Would you have been present while they executed those search warrants as well?
Yes.
Did you have any other roles in assisting with canvas efforts or searching efforts?
I did, yes.
And explain your role there.
That would have included possible known areas of the traveling vehicle to see where possibly, if there would have been evidence located somewhere, if we thought there was an area of interest, we could have performed a grid search or an area search of that specific location.
What is a grid search?
How I would describe a grid search is an area that you want to search, and then you divide that up amongst a group of people. Everybody has a responsibility, and then that one specific area is searched by each team, essentially.
And do you recall the areas that you would have assisted with searching?
I believe there were areas off Highway 30 near Clinton.
I don't know.
May I approach that?
You may.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 38. I can get this up here. Okay. I'm going to have you take a look at State's Exhibit 38. Do you see Highway 30 that you were referencing in terms of the search on this particular exhibit?
I do, yes.
Are you able to describe on the map the area that you're referring to in terms of the search?
I believe it would have been the area that is boxed in that pink shade.
Were there any other areas that you would have?
I'm going to read here from Eastern Iowa Criminal Defense Attorneys Keegan, Tyndall, and Jaeger. The chain of custody is the documentation of who had control of an item of evidence and where it was kept continuously from the time it was seized by police to the time it is offered as an exhibit at trial. The chain of custody documentation is necessary to show the item presented in the courtroom is the same item seized at the time of the arrest. But it doesn't bring up still in evidence bags, but for example, if a police sees a bag of dope during a search of the defendant's vehicle, the chain of custody documentation would typically show that after the arrest, the officer gave the bag to another officer who placed it in the evidence locker. The documentation would also show when and by whom the bag was removed from the locker and brought to the courtroom for the trial. If this information is not adequately documented, the chain is said to be broken. If the defense can show the chain of custody was broken, the court can rule the evidence in question is inadmissible. Now, I don't know if there are any law tubers based in Iowa. Wish I knew. Let's continue.
Assisted in canvassing or searching?
Those were the main, off Highway 30 would have been the main area. I did explore and look through the Credit Island area as well.
And why were those two areas the main focus of the canvassing or searching efforts?
So based on the information that we had at the time, and also going through or getting some information on where one of the phones hit, we knew that there was possible travel down Highway 30. So that was one area where we looked. Also based on some information that we heard from Detorius, Credit Island was an area of interest. That area also made sense based on proximity of the RV park where Dinkins held his RV, if I remember correctly. So those were the two areas that we focused.
Now, were there items of evidence collected in either search in the Clinton area or the Credit Island area?
Items were collected at both.
And to your knowledge, did any of those items that were collected in either of their searches have any significance with this investigation?
No.
Now, returning back to the search of the vehicles, were there items collected by the FBI during the search of the 3 different vehicles involved with this case?
There were, yes.
And as a result of being the case agent, would you become the seizing individual for all of those items?
That is correct, yes.
What does that mean to be the seizing individual?
Sure. So how I describe it is when an item is collected, that could be
He's
collected by
very
anybody on the
proud.
ERT team.
Very proud of
In
his
terms
position.
of seizing, myself as a case agent would have taken responsibility of those items. So I would have been the seizing individual holding on to that property.
Marcus Alexander says, I don't know about Iowa, but I would think the court properly could have objected to the clearly broken chain of evidence on its own motion. Yeah, nobody said anything. Not the judge, not the defense. So I'm praying that there has been some stuff going on that we don't know about. But for me, no matter what, even if they had brought it up during something else before the court started, they would have to reseal it before entering it into evidence and testify to the circumstances of why the evidence bags were opened. But they didn't. They just entered them without objection. And I'm so flabbergasted about it. This trial, they are making a mockery. So unless I get new information, I'm going to say it, this trial is a mockery towards the victim. They are mocking her with this sham of a trial. Because if this keeps happening with evidence that they are entering, bags already opened, nobody testifies to why it's opened, then it's a kangaroo court.
So what do you do with that property then once you are responsible for it?
Sure. So we first make sure it's secured and go through our protocol. And then following that, we have these items that we've collected. The next step for me would be talking to our lab to see what items would be important or significant to go through further processing and testing.
And where is the FBI lab located?
That's in Quantico.
Did you contact the lab in Quantico and consult with them on what items should be or maybe the best for any additional testing?
I did, yes.
And what type of testing was the FBI lab considering at that point?
It would have been, I'm not an expert in this field, but I would say they were interested in items that would possibly provide DNA or something of that nature.
So ultimately then, were you responsible for selecting which items in consultation with the lab were sent for further testing?
That is correct.
Did that also include items that had been previously seized and collected by the Davenport Police Department?
Yes,
And was that same consultation with the FBI lab utilized in regards to anything seized by the Davenport Police Department?
I believe so, yes.
I'd like to talk to you about what items were sent. I think it might be easier if we just kind of focus in on where they were collected and go from there.
Okay.
But speaking first about the Chevy Impala, were there different cuttings from fabric inside for upholstery inside that vehicle and swabs taken from the upholstery that were sent to that lab?
I believe so, yes.
And different clothings, I think a rag that may have been found in that vehicle as well. Those were items that were selected.
Yes,
A hatchet, that item was sent to the lab.
I believe so, yes.
And I'm going to refer to it as vacuum sweepings or attempts to locate maybe fibers or hair. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
So from the Impala, those would have been the items selected for further testing.
Sounds correct, yes.
Moving on then to the RV, where there debris or, again, fiber or hairs that were found on both on top and underneath some foam padding in the RV that were sent for testing,
Sounds correct.
and a machete located on top of a microwave.
Yes,
Then from the Camaro, again, more vacuum sweepings for fiber or hairs sent for further processing,
yes,
and a T-shirt located in the Camaro as well.
yes,
Then from Andrea's apartment, or that apartment on West 53rd Street, so these would have been items seized by the Davenport Police Department. Is that fair to say?
yes,
Did that include then either cuttings or swabs from a mattress?
sounds correct, yes.
Okay, here is what Andrea Burkhart is saying. Chain of custody issues typically go to weight of the evidence, not admissibility. It's a bad practice if they can't identify who opened the bags, when, but it wouldn't generally result in exclusion. That's her answer. Okay, but I sent out the questions to more people, so we will see if there are more opinions.
Swabs taken from a bathroom.
Yes,
Another machete that was located underneath the mattress in that residence.
yes,
Various different clothing items,
correct.
a broom,
Yes,
and some bleach that was recovered from her apartment.
correct.
So all of those items were selected from the apartment for further processing.
That sounds correct, yes.
So then, just to note a few other items as well. Was there a toothbrush and a comb, both thought to belong to Breasia, that were sent to the lab as well?
Correct.
What was the point of sending those items?
To my understanding, to further match DNA.
Were there also a known buccal swab or known DNA swab taken from Henry Dinkins, as well as fingernail clippings, swabs from his hands, from his penile swab?
Okay, now we have that his hands were swabbed, probably for both gun, for residue and blood and whatever's. But then again, they will claim he was cleaned it off, and gunshot residue is quite easily to rinse off.
That were sent for testing as well?
Yes,
And then were there actual hair follicles taken from Mr. Dinkins as well?
that is correct.
Would you have been present when those were taken?
I would have been, yes.
And those hair samples were taken as well
They were taken, yes.
and sent for further processing, excuse me.
I believe they were, yes.
And a known DNA sample for Andrea Culberson, as well as hair samples from her.
Correct, yes.
And then some clothing believed to belong to Breasia that was located in a bag provided by her mother. Were some of those items selected as well for further processing?
I believe so, yes.
Again, would you have been the person who selected which of those clothing items to send?
Yes, again, that would have been with consultation with the laboratory.
Now, throughout your involvement with the investigation, were you aware that at some point the Davenport Police Department had collected soil that was located from the undercarriage of this Chevy Impala?
Yes,
As part of your canvassing and searching efforts,
Oh yeah, the
at some
soil
point then,
samples that
did you find it important
was
to
similar
also
to
collect
the
soil?
one
I
at
did, yes.
the scene
Why
where
is
she
that?
was found.
The reason for that would be to find a matching or known sample that would be matching to what was found underneath the car. So we could figure out exactly where that car was located and where that soil came from.
And how do you go about collecting soil?
Sure. So I made a formal request or a request with our lab in Quantico, and they provided me with a soil collection kit. And this kit included various items to include instructions on how to take soil samples, as well as what I remember, like plastic or glass vials, which would hold the soil contents.
And do you recall approximately how many either glass or plastic vials would be inside one of those kits?
I don't recall. If I had to guess, I would say approximately 8 to 10 plastic or glass vials.
So
Sorry. Unicorn 11 says, I've tried to have a look for mention of it specifically in this case, but I can't find anything. I had a look at a lot and see what chat to wish I hadn't. Yeah. Marcus Alexander says, if you live in the same place with someone, everyone's biologicals is all over everyone else. As long as we aren't talking something that isn't supposed to be there, like semen. Well, they swabbed the same day she disappeared. They swabbed his genital area. And we already have prior testimony that no body fluids, no blood, no DNA is there.
after you received this kit and reviewed the instructions, how then would you have gone about collecting that soil?
Sure. So I read the instructions, and then based on the location that I wanted to collect, I would follow those instructions, put the soil inside the vials that we're discussing, and then I'd put those back into the container, and then those would be sent off for further testing.
Now, the vials, were they contained so that the soil you placed in them couldn't mix with the other soil?
Correct, they were. They each had a lid and a cap that I believe screwed on each one.
Do you recall where you would have taken soil samples regarding this investigation?
I do, yes. So Credit Island would have been one area, and the other area that's familiar to me would be off Highway 30. Somewhere in that area, there would have been soil samples taken.
And to your knowledge, were those soil samples collected while you were canvassing those areas?
That's correct.
So not where she was found?
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 139. Do you recognize this exhibit?
I do. That looks familiar.
And what is this exhibit?
This would have been the collection box that held the soil samples.
Is this the same kit that would have been provided to you from the Quantico lab?
I believe so, yes.
And the soil samples that you would have taken from Credit Island and the areas around Highway 30, would you have then placed those soil samples in this kit?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, again, is this the same kit?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, the state would offer Exhibit 139 into evidence.
Exhibit 139 will be admitted.
Okay, we 1.5 hours in. I'll be right back. Huh. Hi again. Yep. Sometimes you nature calls. Let's go on.
Special Agent Smith,
Yeah.
at some point, I believe you've already discussed, you were transferred to a different office. Did that occur again?
I would say that would have been around April, May of 21.
So at that point, Breasia Terrell's remains had been recovered. However, did you really have any more involvement at that point in time?
Not really.
And why was that?
I was moving on with my transfer, and this case around that time period was then transferred to another agent in my office.
And which agent was that transferred to?
Agent McMillan.
So he would have taken over as the main case agent at that point in time.
That is correct.
Marcus Alexander says, so the chain of evidence is more broken than the Titanic, and the only real witness is a little kid who likely still believes in Santa Claus and Krampus, and there is no DNA evidence. Yeah. What we have is kid being seen with the defendant or at the side of the car at 3:30 in the morning. He walks out of there, drives away. Really strange cell phone patterns. I mean, with that, you can more or less exclude everything else, and you are left with
Special
improbable
Agent
questions.
Smith, we had discussed items that were collected from the canvassing of both the Highway 30 area and Credit Island area, and that there were items that were collected but ultimately didn't have any significance. Do you recall any of those items that would have been collected?
Not specifically, no.
Everything presented so far? Physical evidence, that is.
Now, that list of items that I had read off that were collected from the various vehicles and from the Andrea Culberson's apartment. Now, you mentioned that DNA was one of the testing options that the FBI lab was going to use. Was the hope that they would also be testing for latent fingerprints or trace evidence or hair and that type of thing?
That is correct, yes.
And again, the items that were selected were based on your consultation with the lab.
Yes.
The soil samples that we talked about, Exhibit 139. Did you make any further requests from the lab for analysis on those soil samples as well?
I did, yes.
What did that process entail?
So to my understanding, once those arrived at Quantico, they went through the necessary testing, and reports were then generated based on the soils that they received. And if I recall correctly, there would have been maps that indicated where they believed or similar soils around that area. So showing a geographical footprint of where that soil was from.
So your request then to the FBI, that would have included sending the samples you collected in States Exhibit 139, as well as the samples collected from the undercarriage of the Chevy Impala. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
And so you made the arrangements for both of those items to be forwarded to the Quantico lab for further processing.
I did, yes.
And at some point, did you receive confirmation that they had received those and had done their testing?
I did, yes.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Freeze?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, I'm fighting off a summer cold. So if you don't understand something I say or it comes out a little garbled, please stop me and ask me to rephrase, okay?
Yes, sir.
Agent, how long have you been a law enforcement officer?
Approximately 5 years.
And again, what was your training, undergraduate and postgraduate?
Sure. So I had a college degree, studied finance, and then I worked in healthcare IT.
And then you went to Quantico.
Correct.
Okay. In your
All right, here we go again.
training and experience as a law enforcement personnel, correct me if I'm wrong, but the best practice in any investigation is to first collect evidence and then identify persons of
Okay.
interest, right?
I would say it depends on what case pops up.
Okay, this would mean that my cache memory is full or something like that. And so I will do it like this. It worked last time. I will restart. So I will be gone for about 30 seconds. See you in a bit, because I'll have to restart to get it to stop buffering. Hello again. I hope. Hello. Hello, hello. Add to stream. Dun, dun, dun. Hey, MG Good to see you here. I think I sent you the link, and you can, if you have the possibility, you are more than welcome to join.
Quantum.
Full screen. We were further ahead. There.
Okay. In the course of your investigation, you spoke to this Nancy Spears, correct?
Yes,
And this Nancy Spears informed you that she had information that she heard someone admit to burying a body with someone else, a little girl, at Credit Island, correct?
I believe that's correct. I did not read that report in full.
Okay. What did you do with that information?
So information that comes in, I document like that, and then I follow up if it appears there's any credibility.
So when you followed up on this information, what credibility did it have?
I don't recall exactly what I did following that report.
Okay. Why not? Well, now we know she wasn't buried at that island, but Mr. Freeze? No, it's nerd Jeremy Renner.
So just so I'm
Istanbul.
clear, the state walked you through an examination of what items you sent off to the lab and deemed relevant for a bit of time. As you sit here today, you know that none of those items came back with Breasia Terrell's DNA on them, right?
The items that I sent to the lab, to my understanding, came back with no DNA matches.
And the swabs taken from, and the cuttings taken from Mr. Dinkins had no DNA from Ms. Terrell, right?
That is correct.
That's all I have.
Ms. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Smith, excuse me, that tip from Nancy Spears, your report stated September 16th, 2020. Is it fair to say then that tip would have been provided around that time?
Yes,
And essentially she reported that somebody buried a body, or she heard somebody say that somebody buried a body of a little girl on Credit Island.
yes.
At that point, had Credit Island been thoroughly searched?
From my memory, that area had been thoroughly searched.
Had there been any discovery of a body of any person while that search was occurring?
Hold on. Dog handler with a cadaver dog testified to the scent of remains. But hey, what do I know? It's the prosecution's case.
No.
You were asked about the DNA results of the items that were sent off to the crime lab, and specifically the Impala. To your knowledge, was there any DNA from Henry Dinkins found in that Impala?
Not that I recall.
Okay, that's strange. But is that because he cleaned it, or is that because you are shit investigators?
Same with the RV. To your knowledge, was there any DNA from Henry Dinkins found from the RV?
No.
Again, was it cleaned, or are you shit investigators?
Now, you were asked about opening a case with the FBI on July 11th, 2020, and you were shown that communication log that you would have had to prepare in order to get approval to open that case. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
That report is approximately 3 pages long. Is that fair?
I think that's correct, yes.
And that would include a summary of the information that you had available to you at that point in time, as of July 11th.
Yes,
And so the information you had at that point that you were asked was provided to you by the Davenport Police Department. Is that fair?
that is fair.
But that would have included statements from Andrea Culberson, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
That would have included statements from Henry Dinkins at that point, who had been interviewed on July 10th.
Outside the
Yes.
scope of cross?
That would have included statements from DL,
defense doesn't-
or the son, notorious, of Henry Dinkins, correct?
Yes,
And that also would have included
keep
sort of a
doxing the kid.
cursory search by Davenport Police Department of all of the vehicles involved as well, correct?
yes, that would have been a summary of information that I received from Davenport to show the reason why we opened the case.
And at that point, were you aware that Andrea Culberson, I believe you had testified, had reported seeing Breasia Terrell outside of Henry Dinkins' Impala, or that
Outside the
Impala,
scope
at
of
approximately
cross.
3 o'clock in the morning on July 10th?
Objection.
Yes,
And DL, during his interview, had reported driving around that morning and his dad had gone fishing. Do
that
you
is,
recall that?
I do, yes.
And he also reported seeing a knife that his dad had cleaned with bleach.
Yes,
And you also noted that in that cursory search from the Impala, that the Davenport Police Department noticed they smelled bleach when they opened the trunk of his car.
that is correct.
Every cop everywhere.
And you noted as well
smells
that
the smell of
during
bleach anywhere.
Dinkins' interview, that he was unable to answer basic questions about
Outside
where
the
he
scope
looked
of cross.
for Breasia that morning.
Outside the
Was
cross.
unable to
scope
point to
of
any
cross.
location on a map.
That's my understanding, yes.
But the defense doesn't object. And it's hearsay as well. He's about what they told him.
And so as of July 11th, that was all of the information you were aware of and were relying on when you made this request to open this case, with the potential thought that Henry Dinkins abducted Breasia Terrell.
That's correct.
In 2020, we all smelled of bleach. There was bleach everywhere. All governments told us to clean everything.
I don't have anything further.
Mr. Freeze?
When you received the call in September regarding the person who evidently had heard about someone burying a child or a body at Credit Island, you did have information regarding the gentleman with the cadaver dogs having positive hits for decomposing bodies on Credit Island, though, right?
I don't recall that portion.
You don't recall having any knowledge of the use of cadaver dogs and their conclusions?
I do not.
But you recall Credit Island being awash as far as the search?
Yes,
Okay. You were asked about DNA of Henry Dinkins in Henry Dinkins' car. Given the circumstances, you wouldn't have expected to find Henry Dinkins' blood in his car, right?
it's hard for me to say. It's his vehicle. That's a difficult one to answer.
Okay.
Good catch from the defense. They swabbed apparent areas of what they thought was blood or bodily fluids, not anything else. Not, let's check the steering wheel. Let's check the stick, if it was a stick drive or whatever. They only swabbed suspicious areas. Okay.
You had no reason to believe you'd seen video, or perhaps even Mr. Dinkins himself, he had no evidence of injury, right?
I don't remember any items of injury or him being injured.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Just briefly, is blood the only source of DNA?
No.
Sweat, for example, is a bodily fluid in which somebody could locate DNA.
I'm not an expert in that field, but I believe so, yes,
Depends on where you swab.
alongside saliva, things of that nature.
Depends on where you swabbed. Oh, God, this is so frustrating. This is so frustrating.
On, again, July 10th, when Dinkins was at the Davenport Police Department and was photographed, he didn't appear to have any injuries on him, correct?
Not that I remember.
Given the situation here where we're talking about an adult dealing with a child, is that
Objection,
surprising that Mr. Dinkins
speculation.
would not have any injuries on him?
Not surprising.
Why not?
Objection,
He's-
speculation.
The victim was much smaller. It's a child. That wouldn't surprise me.
I have no further questions.
You may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody's letting Breasia Terrell down in this trial.
The state's next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Officer Craig Burkle to the stand.
Okay, a series of officers and FBI agents. That is where we have it. This is so frustrating. They have a cadaver dog that says, here's something, but it's nothing there. They have a kid who can't make heads and tails of his story, who the prosecution itself, the investigators, ruled out parts of his story as fabrications. You have a lead detective who is, I don't know.
Do you swear to tell the truth,
You
the
have
whole truth, nothing
opened
but the truth?
evidence back
Please have a seat.
before they are entered into evidence. It's embarrassingly bad.
You may proceed, Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name for the record.
Officer Craig Burkle.
What is your occupation?
I'm a police officer with the city of Davenport,
How long have you been employed for the Davenport Police Department?
22 years.
Describe your prior educational background.
I graduated from college. After going to college, I got hired with the police department. Then we went to the police academy, and then we come through field training phase.
And then over the course of your career, have you gone through just extensive training in a number of different areas?
Yeah, we always have schooling.
Yes, we know that the defendant opted for a bench trial versus a jury trial, and I completely understand why. Because it's a kid involved, and more or less everything points to him. So, yeah, opted for a bench trial. Probably the good choice, and I agree with Marcus Alexander. Jurors would nail this guy on emotions only.
Continuing education, getting training through other officers in different areas.
Yeah, they,
Okay. What I'd like to talk with you about is the nature of your assignment with the department back in July of 2020. What was the nature of your assignment at that time?
At that time, I was assigned to the patrol division
What shift were you working?
first.
Were you on duty on July 10th of 2020?
Yes,
What hours are entailed within the first shift?
approximately 6:45 a.m. to 3:50.
yes, he is on the registry, But that, so far at least, is not a part of this trial. So the judge can't count that in. But he knows about it, obviously. So it's about the judge's integrity.
15 p.m.
Did you respond to a dispatch that came out at 8:42 a.m.?
Yes.
And what was the nature of the dispatch?
Responded to a call of a missing child,
What address were you sent to?
2744 East 53rd Street, apartment 8.
Could you describe the location that you went to?
It's off 53rd Street. As you get towards the east side of town, then you go north into the parking lot, and there's several apartment buildings up there.
What's the name of this particular complex?
I don't know the exact name of the complex.
Okay, and I'll just ask you, does Jersey Meadows sound familiar?
Yes,
All right, now 53rd runs what directions?
east-west.
And then which side of 53rd is the Jersey Meadow apartment complex located on?
North side.
Okay. When you went to that location, were you to meet with anyone there, or were you simply sent out to that address?
The defendant, Mr. Dinkins, called, and he was reporting.
Okay, on Twitter, I've had the answer that someone heard the judge say he already opened the bags for the detective. Completely wrong, in my opinion, but if it's in, it's in.
That when he woke up this morning, there was a missing child.
And actually, what I want to do is I want to go back to your investigative report. Do you have that right there before you?
Yes,
All right. In the information that you received, did you believe that Henry Dinkins was the subject that called in, or that it was actually Aisha Langford, the mother, who had called that the child was missing?
Mr. Dinkins.
That's the information that was given to you?
Yes.
Did you know if that was correct or not?
No. To
Okay.
this day, I still believe that it was him.
All right. So then, as far as just a child being reported missing, what additional information was provided about that child?
When I was dispatched, they didn't have a clothing description yet, and there is very vague information. I had to meet with the complainant.
Okay. Officer Burkle, let me ask you about this. When you were going out on this call, did you have any information about Aisha Langford, the mother, having initially called 911 and then being directed to the general number over at the Davenport Police Department?
No, I didn't know Aisha was going to be there until I pulled in the parking lot.
Certainly. And then did you have any information that Aisha Langford actually had communicated with communication specialist Mona Varelli at the Davenport Police Department to provide details about her child missing and how she had found out about that?
I did not.
Okay.
Overruled.
All right. So then when you pulled into the
Hold on, was it an objection for that?
Mona Varelli at the Davenport Police Department to provide details about her child missing and how she had found out about that?
I did not.
Overruled.
Yeah.
All right. So then when you pulled into the complex itself, were
we're
there
past
any
hours.
involved
Yeah.
parties that were there and initiated contact with you as you arrived?
Yes.
Who was that?
Aisha and her son.
All right. Describe what happened when you arrived there in the parking lot.
She
If you all wouldn't mind, if you have social media, please share the link so more people can see this coverage and join in the chat and everything. That would be much appreciated. And of course, like, subscribe, all that YouTube things. Thank you so much.
was sitting in her car waiting for me, and as I got out of my car, she approached me, and she said that her child was missing.
What type of vehicle were you operating?
A marked squad car.
And then how were you dressed that day?
in police blue uniform.
Okay, and so by virtue of that, would you clearly be recognized as a law enforcement member?
Yes.
Officer Burkle, could you describe for us the type of equipment that you have attached to your uniform that you wear each day as you go out and perform your duties?
We have a body camera that is attached to us that records everything we do and say.
Okay. Where is that body camera affixed to?
Center chest.
And were you wearing your body-worn camera that day?
Yes.
Oh,
Would the contact that you would have had with involved parties
we
there at the
get
Jersey
body
Meadows
cam
apartment
evidence.
complex
Okay,
have been
finally
captured
something
and
to.
documented on that body-worn camera?
Yes.
All right. Now let's just go ahead and step outside the storyline for the time being. But let's talk about how that footage then is preserved. Explain the process. So as you go about your duties, is that body-worn camera activated during any contact that you have with members of the public when you go on a call?
Yes.
Okay. What is done with the footage that's captured through that body-worn camera at the end of your shift?
At the end of the shift, we save it for determine what the call is. We determine the length that we want it saved for.
Okay.
Every call, depending upon how it's classified, is preserved for a certain amount of time.
Okay, so there's a retention period that you can select for that footage to be saved as evidence?
Correct.
All right. And then when you return to the department, is that footage downloaded into some type of system?
Yes.
Explain.
When we plug in our camera at the end of the day to charge it up, there's charging stations that automatically download all the videos that we took from the day.
Oh, come on.
And those videos are saved.
Okay. And then are those accessible as an item of evidence when there has been a formal prosecution that is filed and there's the need to be able to view and utilize that evidence in the course of a prosecution?
Yes.
Would that procedure have been followed in this particular instance?
Yes.
Okay. Now, going back to your arrival there at the department, when you got out of your patrol vehicle, was Aisha Langford the first person to make contact with you?
Yes.
Did you see anyone else there in the apartment complex at that time, or I should say the parking lot of the complex at that time, other than Aisha Langford?
Not at that immediate time.
Okay. Describe what happened when that contact occurred between the two of you.
Between Aisha and I?
Yeah.
She approached me, and you could tell that she was kind of shooken. She was concerned her daughter was missing, and that's what she said. Shortly after that, Henry came out from inside the building,
Okay.
and he approached me.
All right. Did Miss Langford indicate to you how she had learned that her daughter was missing?
Yes.
And what did she share with you?
She said that Henry called her this
Okay.
morning.
Who was the child identified as?
Breasia Terrell.
All right. Okay. Now, when Mr. Dinkins came out of the apartment building, did he approach you?
Yes.
Okay. In that approach, did he describe for you what relationship he had to this particular apartment complex?
Not at that time. Eventually learned that he was living there with his girlfriend of 6 years.
Okay. And then who was his girlfriend?
Her name is Andrea Culberson.
Did you at some point during contact identify what apartment Mr. Dinkins had been living at with Andrea Culberson?
Yes.
All right. So with Aisha indicating that she'd learned from Mr. Dinkins, Breasia was missing, did you turn your focus to Mr. Dinkins?
Yes.
How would you describe his emotional comportment?
He didn't seem very concerned. He seemed very relaxed. Nothing out of the ordinary for me going to another call.
Okay. All right. And let's just talk about this. With your tenure at the Davenport Police Department, over the course of your career, as an officer, have you responded to a number of calls where either parents or individuals who are tasked with supervising children have called and reported a child missing?
Yes.
Just tell us about what that experience typically looks like.
Based on my experience over my career, there's a good amount of time that we go to it, the child's just hiding inside the house. So sometimes we find them inside the house, and sometimes they're a runaway, and sometimes they become a missing person. But it's our job to look into this and to try to determine which way we're looking at.
Okay. Normally, if there's a child reported missing, is that child found fairly quickly?
To determine what's quickly.
Okay, and that is a relative term.
Yeah.
All right, so just give us a sense of your own perspective. A parent calls, says, I can't find my child.
Wow. An open-ended question from the prosecution. That's interesting. And new in this trial, at least.
50% of the time, we'll find them pretty quickly.
Okay.
The other 50% of the time, they may be a runaway for a few days, a few weeks, and sometimes they become a missing person.
Okay. In your career, though, how many investigations have you ever been involved in here in the Scott County area where there was a child reported missing that was never found?
None.
All right. Now, that being said, describe what developed during your contact with.
I need to check that out. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. I can't find statistic right now, so let's
Mr.
continue
Dinkins.
listening.
We started off a conversation. It was very casual. He said that Breasia and her brother, who
We're
is his
referring to
son,
him as DL.
DL, they came and spent the night last night. And when he woke up this morning, Breasia was missing.
To be clear, did he say when he woke up that morning, Breasia was missing?
Yes.
When he made that statement, having woken up and Breasia was missing, what impression did that create for you as an officer?
Well, it was 8:42 in the morning. So at that time, I was thinking maybe Mr. Dinkins just woke up and realized that she was missing. But later in the conversation, he ends up saying, I've been looking for her for a few
Oh, come on.
hours.
Okay. While you were having that discussion with him then, where was Aisha Langford at?
She is back in her car, I believe.
Okay. At some point in time, does she approach to listen to the conversation between yourself and Mr. Dinkins?
Yes.
And then describe the dynamics that developed as the two parties are there and you are just trying to gather details.
As I'm trying to gather details, they get into a verbal argument. They start yelling at each other. Aisha is upset, like, you lost my child, you lost my child. And Mr. Dinkins kept replying, I didn't lose your child. She's gone, or she's missing from, I woke up, she was missing. She ended up just getting upset, and she took DL back to the car. And I proceeded on to speaking to Mr. Dinkins to try to get more info.
Okay. Now, at the point that Aisha had gone back to her car, what types of personal information were you trying to collect from Mr. Dinkins?
Every time I go to a call and there's going to be a report generated, I always get the name, date of birth, personal information, address, phone numbers, places of employment, different things like that that we all need for a report.
Okay. As you were going through that process with Mr. Dinkins, describe what occurred.
He gave me his name. He gave me his date of birth. I asked for his address next. He said he didn't know his address. I was like, you don't know your address? And he's like, it's somewhere down by Ralston, Purina. And that is the complete opposite side of the city that we're on. I said, okay. And I was like, what's your phone number? And he's like, I don't know my phone number either. I was like, how do you not know your phone number? And he's like, well, hold on a minute. And he looked up his phone and he proceeded to find his phone number and gave it to me then.
Okay. Are telephones a device that become very important tools for law enforcement during the
This
course
is
of
an important
investigations?
witness.
Yes.
Explain.
This is important for this trial.
They're basically a digital footprint of yourself. Everything you do is pretty much becomes.
This witness is important. The cell phone guy was important. Not much else I've seen is actually important. This one provides with actual circumstantial evidence. Well, Andrea is also important. Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ. This should have been a 1-week trial.
Saved on that phone. Every text you send, every thing you Google, everything that you do on that phone, it's a digital footprint that follows you around forever.
All right. And that being said, did this cell phone of Mr. Dinkins actually become very important in the course of the investigation?
Yeah.
All right. Is the telephone then associated with the phone that he has very important?
Yes.
And in the course of investigations, do law enforcement then take those telephone numbers and apply for search warrants?
Yes.
Okay. Now, within the context of that conversation, then, did you speak to him about just your own experience as an officer when people call in and say that their children are missing?
Yeah, I did. I said, hey, don't be offended by this, but based on my experience doing this job, a lot of times the kids are still inside the house. I go, would you mind if I go into the apartment one more time and take a look?
What was his response to that request?
He said he already looked. She's not there. And so I asked, do you mind if can I take another look? He said, sure.
Okay. Where did you proceed at that point?
We walked back to the apartment door, and we were greeted outside the front door by his girlfriend, Andrea.
Okay. Officer Burkle, I'd like for you to come down to the diagram so that we've got some perspective where that front door to apartment number 8 is relative to the.
Oh, the diagram you erased earlier?
Costco, because we've had discussions about Costco.
Oh, I need to answer that phone call. Just a second.
What I'll have you do, I'm going to have you just erase this area that has been drawn over by Eastern and Veterans. But let's leave everything here relative to River Drive and Red Island. All right. I know it doesn't give you much space to work with. It looks like we used a marker that wasn't a dry erase marker for that diagram.
Oh,
All right.
Jesus
Show
Christ,
us,
lady.
where the apartment building is situated.
Maybe you
Place
shouldn't have
Costco.
erased.
Show us where
Maybe
we
you
can
should
access the door, and then just give us a perspective of the
use
parking
one
lot,
other.
where individuals who live in that building would park. And we're going to just use this small area down here. It's not the best. Yes.
This is an Eastern.
It would have been so easy to just print that out.
We'll have Jersey Ridge down here. So 53rd Street. So we're gonna
Why is it so hard to
And then just
use
go up in
the
here.
correct
And it's a little longer entrance. We gotta go up. The
print
building's gonna be.
of the apartment? This is so stupid.
There's a bunch of buildings. So as you pull into the entrance right here, pull in, this is all parking lot right there. This is all parking lot.
And then write in Costco so that we know where Costco is located at.
Tree line right here, Costco.
All right, okay.
Officer, if you could please just step off to the side, point that out to me again.
Yeah, let's walk through that.
It's
And then
it's very difficult. I know with the board and positioning yourself, but if you'd step off to the side and just show that to me so I can see what we're discussing.
And then Officer Burkle, what I'll do is we'll walk this for purposes of our written record. Over there behind your seat, there's a pointer. Can you see that, Officer Burkle, on the witness stand? Okay. All right. Now, as we're looking at the diagram, have you drawn Jersey Ridge? What direction does Jersey Ridge run?
North-south.
All right. And then does 53rd intersect to Jersey Ridge?
It does.
What direction does 53rd run?
This goes east-west.
Use a printout.
It's north up here. North is actually going to be this way.
Certainly.
Oh, God.
Now, is the apartment complex located on the north side of 53rd or the south side of 53rd?
North side.
Okay. And then can you show us on the diagram just generally where you had depicted the drive going into the apartment complex and just some samples of buildings that you had drawn?
So that's the entrance right there. There's multiple pods. There's hundreds of apartments in there.
Sure.
There's multiple pods, and all of them, as you come in, will be apartment, apartment, apartment. Then it starts to dip back and goes apartment, 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 apartment. Then it comes back towards the entrance. And then you'll keep driving down. It's the
Jesus
same thing.
Christ, that's the
As you
tiger.
pull
Oh,
in, this is our
God.
parking lot right here. And the building
This is so
is right
stupid.
there with the tree line and Costco.
Okay. And then for purposes of our written record, Costco would lie what direction relative to the building where apartment number 8 was situated?
Printouts, but no,
East. Okay.
have
Now,
them
in that parking lot area,
sketch.
do you access the front door from that parking lot, or do you have to go somewhere else to access the front door to apartment number 8?
There's 4 apartments on the front of the apartment, and then there's 4 on the back. This is apartment 8. You have to walk around to the back to access the apartment.
Okay, so then essentially, would it be on the Costco side of that physical structure?
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead and take your seat, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay. Officer Burkle, when you had reiterated that you would like to take another look, at the point that you proceeded back to apartment 8, what did Mr. Dinkins do?
He walked back there with me.
Okay, now, is there a sidewalk that runs the distance
Yeah.
to the backside of that building?
The whole thing is, yeah, there's sidewalks that get you to each apartment on the front side and the back side.
Did you have any sense of the proximity of Mr. Dinkins to yourself as you approached apartment number 8?
He was he was near me,
Okay.
within 5-10 feet.
And then describe what happened when you got to apartment number 8.
Andrea was standing outside. I think we knocked. We knocked on the door. Andrea came down. I identified myself. I was in uniform. I explained to her, I said, based on my experience, a lot of times these kids are hiding inside the house or apartment. I go, would you mind if I come in and take another look? She looked at me, and then she pointed at Henry, and she's like, did he say that's okay? And I looked, and I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, come in. And so I went in. It was a small apartment. It's a 1-bedroom apartment. And I proceeded to look around in the apartment, looking under the beds, looking in the closets, looking in the kitchen, and I didn't see any indication of her being in there.
Okay. Officer Burkle, with you being inside apartment number 8, was there anything about the condition of the apartment that would have given you pause for concern? And let me be more specific. Was there anything in that apartment that would suggest that something
Objection. You asked a good question. Let him answer. Instead, narrative.
terrible had happened in the apartment?
Not at that time. I mean, I'm just looking for, to make sure she's not there.
Okay, so does it look like a normal apartment?
Yeah,
All right. Did you check closets?
yes,
And of course, you indicated under the bed.
Yep.
Would you even check cupboards?
I didn't look inside cupboards, no.
Okay, but she's not there.
Right.
While you were up there checking the apartment, did Mr. Dinkins come into the apartment?
No,
And so when you had gone in to check, had you lost sight of where he was at?
yes.
Describe then what you discovered.
As I was only in there for 5 minutes, you know, as I came back outside, I need more information from Henry. I believe he's the complainant who called me wanting to file this missing person report. And I don't have a lot of information yet. So I come out.
Hold on. He is the one who called you. Hold on here. We have heard testimony that nobody, definitely not him, but it was the mother who called. And now you are testifying that he called you. Everybody is contradicting each other in this. Let's listen to it again.
I need more information from Henry. I believe he's the complainant who called me wanting to file this missing person report. And I don't have a lot of information yet. So I come outside and I'm like, where's Henry at? And I go to the front of the building, the side, I don't see him anywhere.
Okay. What do you do at that point?
I ended up calling him with the number that he provided to me.
Okay. And then when you called Mr. Dinkins with the number that he provided to you, did he answer that phone?
No,
Okay. Was that the only call then that you made to him throughout the course of that morning?
no, I made 6 phone calls in that first hour.
And in those 6 calls that you made in that first hour, did he ever pick up any of those calls?
He did not, and I was unable to leave a message because his voice box was full.
Okay. At some point then, do you try to contact him in a different way?
I do.
Explain.
I ended up texting him, identifying myself as Officer Burkle, because obviously he wouldn't have my phone number. And I said, I need him to call me back so I can get more information so I can file this report.
Okay. What time did you send the text?
It was 10:43, I believe, so a little over 2 hours after the initial call came in.
All right. Thank you for bringing that up. There's been testimony offered that Aisha Langford's conversation with Mona Varelli occurred at 8:29. Did you get dispatched after 8:29 a.m.?
Yes.
All right. Will your body-worn camera, does it have any type of date or time that appears on that footage to give us a perspective of when your initial contact would have occurred with the parties?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then, did Mr. Dinkins ever return your text?
Never returned my text. He called me at 12:04, and when he called me, he told me that he's walking into the police department.
Okay. Now, do you do a search of the area out there?
Yeah.
Describe the search that you conducted.
Earlier, things just aren't sitting right.
I
And so I contacted my supervisor,
they will
Sergeant
show the
Willoughby,
footage, Jonathan.
and I said, things just aren't adding up here. And so he came out, then we called for more officers. And we eventually got a picture from Aisha of what Breasia looked like. And like I said, there's, a few hundred apartments out there and businesses. So we went knocking on every single door, and some answers, some no answers, but we were looking for her, and nobody had seen her, and nobody had seen anything suspicious. And so we were just looking for more answers.
Okay. If you were to compare the dynamics of this missing child report to prior missing child reports that you'd handled in the past, how would you compare your feeling?
Like I said, something just wasn't sitting right with me. We had gone to different lengths that I have never personally done in 19 years at that time. Then we ended up getting drones out, searching fields, going to businesses, because it's on 53rd Street, going to different neighborhoods, things like that.
Okay. Was that entire area along 53rd Street to include both commercial businesses, but also residential areas, canvassed and searched by law enforcement?
Yes,
Did the Detective Bureau end up coming out that morning?
yes.
Okay. And if you could just give us a sense of just the manpower and how they were responding out to the area when things weren't sitting right with officers, how would you describe that?
As the day went on, just more officers kept coming and coming, as we were, as sources were needed, you know.
Sure.
We had a lot of ground, a lot of area to cover, and we just kept, more officers kept coming to help.
Okay. And were there any breaks at all to give any indication of where Breasia was at?
No.
All right. Now, let's talk about Aisha. So Aisha had left with the Torias. When you contacted her, did she give you an indication of collecting information for law enforcement to utilize?
Yes.
And what had she been collecting for law enforcement to utilize?
Well, I contacted her to get it because she had left prior to me being able to speak to her about it because she was frustrated. And then I tried to get a little background on the story. When Breasia went over, when DL went over, and she provided that to me. She said, and then I said, "You got pictures?" Because we need pictures of what Breasia currently looks like.
Okay. Now, Aisha has testified at this point in time, and she described a narrative of events. Let me ask you this. Did she indicate what date Mr. Dinkins had come into contact with DL and Breasia?
Yes.
And what was your understanding relative to July 10th?
Mr. Dinkins went over to the grandmother's house to pick up DL. And while he was there, they asked if anybody else wanted to go. And Breasia and the older brother both wanted to go. But Mr. Dinkins said that he'll take Breasia, but he's not taking the older brother.
Okay. All right. And then from there, was there a discussion about how she found out Breasia was purportedly missing?
How did she find out?
Right.
Yeah, she said she received the phone call that morning
From who?
from Mr. Dinkins that he woke up and Breasia was missing.
And then did she share with you any information about what DL told her after they left the apartment complex that morning and she went to look for pictures?
So after their verbal argument, when she took DL back to the car and they left, DL told her that Mr. Dinkins came into the room that Breasia and DL were sleeping in and woke Breasia up and said, "Let's go." And she got up and left.
Okay. And then did DL indicate whether or not he'd ever seen Breasia again after?
Hold on. What?
Mr. Dinkins came into the room that Breasia, when she
Apartment about what DL told her after they left the apartment complex that morning and she went to look for pictures.
So after their verbal argument, when she took DL back to the car and they left, DL told her that Mr. Dinkins came into the room that Breasia and DL were sleeping in and woke Breasia up and said, "Let's go." And she got up and left.
Okay.
That's new because that wasn't in his testimony. It wasn't in the cross. According to the girlfriend, DL was very much asleep. So another deviation from what in DL's testimony. One more, as it wasn't enough with all the other crap he said. Peace Peony asks, did the ex-girlfriend ever say what the defendant said as to why Breasia was outside by his car at 3:30 a.m.? She claims she didn't ask. And the defendant didn't respond or say anything.
And then did DL indicate whether or not he'd ever seen Breasia again after that?
No, he said he started crying, went back to sleep, and he never woke back up until Andrea came in and during daylight time, sometime in the morning.
And then did you have a chance to speak with DL about those particular topics?
Yeah.
And what DL confirmed for you?
Yeah.
All right. Did you also have an opportunity to speak with Andrea Culberson?
Yes.
Did Andrea Culberson provide you a description of what had occurred the previous evening after the children had arrived there at the apartment complex?
Yeah.
All right. And then did she give you a timeline of what had occurred early that morning when she woke up and what she discovered?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was your understanding of the time that she had woken up?
Due to being in a one-bedroom apartment, they let the kids, both Breasia and DL, sleep in the bed while her and Mr. Dinkins laid on the air mattress out in the living room. She said she woke up around 3 o'clock, noticed Mr. Dinkins was no longer there.
Another deviation from prior testimony?
But she noticed his phone was still at the apartment, so she never called him.
Okay. And then did she notice Breasia gone at that point?
She said, yeah, Breasia was gone at that point.
Let's talk about Mr. Dinkins
In her testimony, she was
what he was wearing at the apartment complex.
She wasn't calling.
I apologize
Sure.
for the interruption, but I think this would be a natural break.
Sure.
In your questioning, we will take our mid-morning break. We'll be in adjournment for 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Jesus Christ, what the actual fuck is going on here? Nobody's testimony makes sense. Everybody's testimony changes. Entirely. I can't make up or down with this at all. But we caught up another hour and a half. So I think this is also a natural time for us to yes, Maymat, this is a complete clusterfuck. Complete. Everybody changes testimony. Why do I keep asking us? It's a question right out to the ether because I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. Everybody's changing testimony. There's evidence that isn't evidence. They have opened evidence bags. I'm so confused. Nothing so far makes sense. Except that more or less everything points to the defendant. Unless the prosecution manages to fuck it up completely. And so far, they might actually succeed. It is embarrassing to see this low level of trial. It's embarrassing. This isn't justice for Breasia. This is just embarrassing from everyone involved in this. Because I had faith in the ex-girlfriend's testimony, but then here comes this cop and says, "Oh no, she said something else." Great, now we can't trust her either. Fuck. All right. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to send you off to Salvador Dali. You have seen in here on my channel. Here they are covering another trial. But his coverage, oh wait, his coverage isn't starting until in 45 minutes. Maybe Broken Baker is still on. If he is, I will send you all to Broken Baker. Dun 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 dun. Let's see here. Redirect. No, it just got offline. Okay. Then it's you have 45 minutes of a break. And yeah, so you will have a 45-minute break before Salvador Dali takes over. So you can go, take a piss, take a number 2, take a beer. Oh, it's 9. Oh, it's 10 p.m. here, so it's 4 p.m. at your place at best. So you can't do what I'm doing. But I will send you off to Sal, who starts in 45 minutes. It's time. Yeah, yes, Mama Saurus. It's time for us to just stay confused. Peace Peony want his body cam footage nailed down exactly what was said. Yeah. And what if it says something else than it testified to? Then we're oh Jesus Christ. Yeah. I will see you all here tomorrow morning US time, 8:45 a.m. Eastern time. And we will continue with this. This is this is a clusterfuck of a trial. And I feel so sorry for the victim that this is the best they can do. It's embarrassing. It is so embarrassing. All right. Thank you all for showing up. Have a nice day, and I'll talk to you later.